Good evening. Welcome to this evening's special City Council meeting, Monday, March 16th, 2026 at 5:30. May I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Orbach.
Here.
Councilmember Westman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jensen.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
Here. Would you all join in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to invite Director Konev to give us a little update on our Stockton Bridge.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council members. As you may recall, we had to close the westbound, that is the out of the village lane of the Stockton Bridge. We completed our investigation with the bridge engineer on Thursday, and we determined we needed to make some emergency repairs. So on Friday, and then again today, we did a bit more investigation, took a sample of rebar out of the bridge that we're sending for testing. That should be back tomorrow or at the very latest on Wednesday morning to finalize the repair scope and get on it. We anticipate the bridge to be open within the next 2 weeks. I'm sure there will be more updates in the next few days, but wanted to give you this brief update this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. May we have?
Can we follow up on that a little bit?
Sure.
Is it possible to sort of review the signage that we put up and make certain that it's clear to most motorists? I've had a lot of people actually say to me, the westbound lane is confusing because so many people think west is where the ocean and the beach are. And in this particular case, it's on the other side. So if we could just review particularly the digital signs that are easy to change and make certain they're as clear as possible, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Report on closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City Council met in closed session to discuss the one item on this evening's closed session agenda. Staff provided the City Council with an update. City Council provided direction. No reportable action was taken. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Additional materials.
Staff received 7 emails after publication of the agenda packet. All additional materials were available for the public's review as well as the council review. They're also available in hard copy at the back of the room.
Great, thank you. We'll go to oral communications from members of the public. This is on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. You'll have up to 3 minutes. Welcome.
My name is Goran Klapic. I used to play basketball at Jade Street Park a lot in the past. I have a question. When will this project be done with all this construction around this area? You know, people cannot play ball very well because the bathrooms are not clean there to use when you need to use your stuff, not for drug use, but other, I mean, I don't want to be profane now, what you do in a bathroom, you know, when you need to do your stuff. So my question is, where's the taxpayers' money going? Huh? Are not taxpayers paying for the facility there to be maintained? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak? All right. That'll take us to item 5A. This is our Capitola Mall and Objective Standard Zoning Code amendments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'll be going over the latest updates on the zoning code amendments for the Capitola Mall. And actually, before we get started, I did want to, there's no staff communications tonight, but I did want to announce that on Wednesday night, we're having a virtual community meeting, and the link is on our webpage for the 41st Avenue Corridor Study, which is very much aligned with the work we're doing at the Capitola Mall. So that's Wednesday night, a virtual meeting, 5 p.m. Okay, so before you this evening is the Capitola Mall updates. This presentation first will go into the background of the housing element, and why we are where we are today. And then additional information that we've received both from Merlone Geyer on 2 occasions. Once comments came in right before our last meeting on February 23rd, and then this weekend we received additional comments. And then also the items that you asked for more information on. So we're going to step back and just introduce some slides that you've seen, but just so everyone's up to date. So what is the housing element? It's a long-range planning document in which it identifies the city's housing needs and constraints. It sets goals, policies, and objectives. And then it puts together programs on how we're going to address the needs, and also includes a sites inventory, identifying areas where adequate housing could be developed. The housing element background is we updated the 6-cycle housing element in 2024. The housing element programs that are required for our zoning code amendments. We adopted a lot of new code in 2024 to address items that existed in our code that were an impediment to housing. In 2025, the first half of 2025, we focused on multifamily residential standards, and then since then we've been working on the mall zoning code amendments. So the Capitola Mall zoning code amendments, they must align with the housing element and implement one of the programs within the housing element, which is program 1.7. So the sites inventory this is citywide. We are committed to plan for 1,336 units. The city must show that we have adequate sites in order to develop these additional units that are needed. We are not developers, so we do not develop the sites ourselves, but we must, as planners and city officials, plan for these sites within our city. And that's part of the exercise with the mall updates. Next slide, please. This is a map of our housing sites inventory, and every site that has a pink outline is a site within our inventory. And so within the Capitola Mall, within the entire block, the housing element calls for 1,777 units, and on the Merlone Geyer properties, 1,126 units. And then this slide shows exactly why we're here tonight. So there are programs 1.6 and 1.7 in our housing element that are focused on the Capitola Mall, and within that, there's a calling to redevelop the mall site with a strong sense of urban design cohesion, establish the whole block of the Capitola Mall as the Capitola Mall properties, increase the height to 75 feet, to define mall redevelopment to be a mix of uses, including residential and retail and commercial. We've also committed to excluding parking garages from the floor area calculations, so the overall square footage the parking garages will not count towards. And then adopting objective development standards to facilitate mall redevelopment. What that means is creating standards which you can use no bias on, and in reviewing them, they're measurable, and the developer knows exactly what's expected, and then when we do the review, it either complies or doesn't comply. State housing law. Over the years, state housing law has become more and more protective of housing and geared towards developing more housing during this time of a housing crisis. And so there's many housing laws out there about keeping your housing element in compliance. And if your housing element were to fall out of compliance, it really can put a city at risk of getting grant money and lawsuits and that type of thing. So as we're moving through, having objective standards really protects us when an application comes in. So we have review criteria that can be reviewed against any new housing developments. And so we'll go to the next slide. Current amendments that we're focused on, there's one amendment to our general plan land use element to talk about the floor area ratio in the general commercial zoning district and the mall site, and then our municipal code title 17, which is the zoning code. So as I said, we've been working on this the latter half of 2025 and into 2026. This lists all the different meetings we've had over time. The updates We've had community meetings, stakeholder meetings, also 5 planning commission hearings, and tonight is the second city council meeting with the second draft, with including updates since that last meeting. So the one change that's happening to the land use element is just to increase the floor area of the mall property to 2.0. And floor area is the overall square footage that you can have in a development. Clear. And now we're going to head into the second part of the presentation. This really focuses on where we left off since our last meeting on February 23rd. On February 23rd, we received a letter from Merlone Geyer Partners that included 10 items to be addressed. Next slide, please. Since that date, in our staff report, we've shown how we've addressed 7 of those 10 items. And in receiving their letter yesterday, the comment letter, there are still 5 remaining items to discuss. One is new, it's on bike parking. And that one we've had limited time to really dive into. When we get to that slide, I'll be suggesting that we include that in updates at a different time and just on updates for the parking section of our code, because there was inadequate time to do enough analysis on such an important topic. So first I'll introduce the tiers. So tier 1 is for 100% housing development with no commercial. And this is a requirement of state code that because it's a housing site, the mall is a housing site within our commercial zone, we're required to allow 100% housing development because we rely on more than 50% of our housing sites within our commercial districts. Next slide, please. So within the tiers 2 and 3, these tiers have been developed to incentivize the developer to bring in more community benefits to our community. Housing is a great benefit, but also a hotel, meeting space, retail. This is our regional commercial district. It's really important that we keep commercial there in order to stay sustainable as a city. And in return, the developer gets incentives through height, floor area, density, and parking. This next slide is very busy, and we've had a lot of discussion on tiers. We've had the Planning Commission recommendation, and we'll go to the next slide. We've had Councilwoman Westman suggested a different option for tiers at our last meeting, and then also Merlone Geyer in their recent letter suggested tiers. This slide is highlighting the 4 remaining items that we don't see that are not in alignment, and that will be the focus of the discussion tonight. So minimum hotel and meeting space. So Merlone Geyer is asking for 85 room hotel within tier 2 and meeting space of 2,500 square feet of meeting space. And then within tier 3A, 120 rooms and 4,000 square feet of meeting space. So within the Kaiser Marston Associates economic development study on Capitola Mall retail and hotel market overview, they provided feedback on both the hotel and the square footage per hotel room for meeting space. And they did think that a hotel would be feasible. It would exceed the market average revenues with strong operator and brand. In their recommendation, they didn't have a specific recommendation on hotel rooms. However, when they presented to the Planning Commission, they did support an 85-room hotel as pretty typical and likely to be supported by the market demand. So they said, and as you add rooms, then it becomes more risky of whether or not the market will sustain it. And then they suggested 25 to 30 square feet of meeting space per hotel room. Next slide, please. So this slide shows what 25 to 30 square feet per hotel room looks like, and you can see that on the table below. So it really, for a 120 room hotel within 3A, it would be somewhere between 3,000 and 3,600. And Merlone Geyer was willing to go a little bit beyond that to 4,000. So next slide. Minimal commercial area, this has also been a topic of discussion at these meetings. Within Tier 2, the Planning Commission recommended 30,000 square feet, and Merlone Geyer is asking for 25,000. And during our last meeting, when Councilwoman Westman brought up her suggestion, she was saying not have a Tier 2, but within her 3A, 35,000 square feet, Planning Commission at 40,000, and Merlone Geyer suggesting 35,000. So with that, the Kaiser Marston, their suggestion was to have future meeting space between 25 to 35,000 square feet. And they said the mall continues to have a strong redevelopment potential, but they're forecasting that it'll be strongest in food and beverage and also smaller tenant spaces. So as we've been working through this, one component of these updates has been a fiscal analysis requirement at the time of application. And the fiscal analysis is really to estimate those incremental changes to the city's revenues and expenditures that will occur due to the development application. And so it really helps us plan for the future, and especially our council as we go through budgets and understanding what these developments, what the impact will be. A 100% affordable project would be exempt from a fiscal impact analysis, and it's also within the code we've stated in alignment with state law that we cannot use this as a basis to deny a project or reduce the density. So why are we requiring this? This shows our general fund revenue slide, and we're very dependent on our sales tax revenue, and as well as our property tax and our TOT tax. So we want to ensure that we continue to have thriving retail and hotel on the site. So this slide breaks down the fiscal analysis, including the new suggestions by Merlone Geyer Partners. And you can see that at the bottom of the slide, how they match up. I want to stress that the fiscal analysis that we've done, there's a lot of variables that go into this. So as we utilize this as a tool, it's not an exact science. As you increase certain expectations or assumptions, the numbers will change, but it's a really good tool to look at this bottom line and just see how they are relative to one another and not so much focus on the exact numbers, because it's really which one is understanding the overall big picture, but just know that this is not an exact science. We're doing our best to come as close as we can with those numbers. So next slide, please. So I'll run through a fiscal analysis example for Tier 2. The mall, we show the new revenue of a project, and we also estimate what the lost existing revenue is at the mall site. So with a net new revenue, and this is based on the it's the Planning Commission Tier 2, which was 30,000 square feet of commercial, an 85-room hotel. And that ends up with a net revenue of about 1.5 million. The mall expenditures, we look at the cost per person, and then we also add into that what the additional costs of service are for our police, public works, and also adjusting that number for inflation. So we came up with about 1.2 million. And so the overall net fiscal impact of option 2 by Planning Commission would be around 270,000. Next slide. So this next slide shows just how variable it is. Within our model, we used a household size of 1.5 persons per household. And we came upon that because we expect with the larger multifamily development to have smaller units and smaller house size. But if you were to put in our current house size from the 2020 census, the household size was 2.1 persons per household, and you can see it swings those numbers by about $300,000. So it's one variable, and it makes a big swing. Next slide. So also within the expenditures, when we have $1.5 million, of revenue, and how we choose to use that revenue, we put assumptions into our model. But you could look at it in many ways. The council at that time could say, well, we need to just increase our police force, and that could be done with that money. We could increase it by 50%. Or we could say, the council use, or just for example purposes only, but the council could say, well, we really need to increase our public works crew and focus on that. And you could get about double the amount of public works crew with $1.5 million. Or as we did in our fiscal analysis, we said we're going to need a mix of things, and we put that into the equation. And at the same time, the city council would likely make sure that there's leftover revenue to put towards CIP projects and other community benefits for the city. So, next slide. So the next topic is perimeter building height. As a reminder, the perimeter building height is the distance zone that's measured from the street into the mall property. Originally, the Planning Commission recommended 125 feet around the entire perimeter. And since our last meeting, there seemed to be consensus on the part of City Council to switch that to 75 feet along 41st Avenue and Capitola Road, but keep the 125 along Claire's where there's more residents close by. Next slide. So in Merlone Guyer's recent letter, they were suggesting to increase the perimeter height within that setback area to 75 feet. Right now, if we go to the next slide, the Planning Commission recommendation was 65 feet around the perimeter. And so this slide is showing the perspective of the Planning Commission. Actually, it's a little lower than the Planning Commission. It's at 55 feet. This would be a tier 1. And from the street, it would appear as a 5-story building. Across the street, the 55-foot building makes it so a 75-foot building would not become visible until it's 75 feet back. I mean, it becomes visible a little over 120 feet back, and that's based on the distance of the width of 41st Avenue. And then if we go to the next slide, with the request to go up to 75 feet, you can see that experience from the street would be a much taller building at probably 7 stories, 7.5. And really the human scale is a lot different when you're experiencing a 5-story versus a 7-story building. And then from across the street, it would also appear as a much taller building. But it would help with not seeing there's an 85-foot building behind it. It'd be hard to see. So the perimeter heights are shown on this screen, and staff continues to recommend tier 1 at 55 feet and tier 2 and 3 at 65 feet. And it's really based on like having a more human scale along the major streets, and then the higher development at 85 feet within the core of the development. Ground floor commercial is the next topic. Merlone Geyer Partners in their most recent letter was asking to reduce the ground floor height, measured floor to floor for non-restaurant and hotel uses to 16 feet. Our original code draft was at 18 feet floor to floor. And why are we asking for the 18 feet floor to floor? We really want this to be where we're decreasing the overall commercial space. We want to make sure that it can be competitive in the market. There are retailers out there that would like certain specifications, including high ceilings, and this is because the natural light is better, the storefronts can be better, and attract and retain quality tenants. It's also flexibility between different types of tenants, where restaurants might like a higher roof and or ceiling, and others may like lower. It keeps flexibility between different tenants. And then as we're expecting less commercial on the site, it's our recommendation to require this as more higher quality commercial site. Next slide, please. And this is just an image of how you measure floor to floor height at 18 feet, and then what the measurement is, as we're suggesting that we're going to change the measurement from floor to bottom of structure. So that's the blue line, so that the tenant has the ability to have some flexibility within that mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and ceiling heights. So this is just showing our suggested change to 16 feet clear from the ground floor to the bottom of the structure. Bike lanes, another topic. Marlone Geyer would like us to allow sharrows throughout the project. And those sharrows are bike lanes that are shared with cars. And so the future of the Capitola Mall, it's a 46-acre block, 31.5 acres are owned by Marlone Geyer. Today, there are no streets, no bike lanes, and no housing on the development. And one of those first slides I was showing the expected development on that site could be as high as 1,777 units. So it will be, if developed as we're expecting, the most dense neighborhood in Capitola. And so here I have a quote from our general plan, which talks about just enhancing mall access for all modes of transportation. And multimodal transportation is a term that's used throughout our general plan, planning for future development. Next slide, please. So our recommendation for bike lanes is not to change the Planning Commission recommendation, continue to require bike lanes within the new internal streets, and then limit the sharrow use to areas in front of commercial. And then our deviation section could apply to this as well. So bicycle parking, this is a new item that came in the letter received from Marlone Geyer yesterday, and I understand the importance of it to the developer. At this time, we just did not have enough time to do an adequate study of the impacts of bike parking. We did look at the Santa Cruz ordinance. It seemed to be similar to ours, but I'd suggest, go to the next slide, that we review this at a future time, the next time we do zoning code updates. And then lastly, project phasing. So we've created within this code new project phasing. The first step would be to put a deed restriction on any tier 2 or tier 3 project where the proposed hotel and or commercial is located. And then step 2, the developer would have options of either doing a certificate of occupancy phasing or an annual fee payment. Next slide, please. So the certificate of occupancy phasing would be setting up timing around when a building permit is issued and when certificates of occupancy are issued that the residents can move into the buildings. So it's really about issuing permits and getting occupancy in a timely manner. If you have questions about this, I can come back to it another time. Next slide, please. The second option is to pay an annual fee. And so this would, at the time of the fiscal impact analysis, at the time of entitlement, a review would be done on understanding the impact to the city. And then from that information, we'd arrive on an acceptable annual rate per residential unit to pay in a fee until they develop their commercial or hotel. And then that payment would be due 1 year after the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and annually thereafter. So tonight, this concludes my presentation, and we are suggesting that the City Council adopt a resolution amending the general plan land use element, introduced for the first reading by title only, waiving further reading of an ordinance amending the Capitola Municipal Code Title 17 zoning, and third, adopt a resolution authorizing submittal to the California Coastal Commission for certification of the amendment to the local coastal program. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I've got Ben Noble Planning next to me, our consultant, and Layla is here from our city attorney's office. And Ryan Paul is on Zoom, the architect that's been working on our team. So
Great.
thank you.
All familiar faces. Thanks for being here. I'll go over to Councilmember Clark for any clarifying questions.
I don't have any questions at this time. I just would like to make some statements when we get to the deliberation. Thank you.
Councilmember Rohrbach?
Just a couple kind of clarifying questions. And I think in my mind, I'm still not clear the process of all the different steps, like getting a deed restriction and when the certificate of occupancy comes in and the timeline for those things. Like I know you said a year from when they get the certificate of occupancy, they'll start to pay. Can you give me
Yeah.
more of a layman's like timeline?
Yes. So at the time that they get their entitlements from the Planning Commission, so when Planning Commission issues their design permit and their use permit, they'll, at that time of entitlement, they'll then move forward with a map for recording the new parcels. And at that time, we would require a deed restriction on the map. So if they were creating a new parcel for a hotel, a deed restriction would go on that parcel, stating that this hotel site must be utilized for hotel use and the conditions tied to it.
So this just makes sure they don't change their mind within those 10 years to say, oh, we're not going to build a hotel anymore. We're going to build housing instead. Is that correct?
Yep.
It's a way for us to protect ourselves.
Yes.
Ensure that they do what they.
So once they have the deed restriction in place, the next step is to either move forward with the phasing of occupancy in which, or a fee structure. So at that time, within the deed restriction, we'll identify which option they're going for, and within the phasing, I don't have the phasing plan right in front of me right now, but we would issue the first building permit for a residential development. And then at the time, and then the second for phase 2, we would issue a building permit for the commercial or hotel in phase 2. And at the time of, I'm just trying to think of when they can get their CO. I think they can get there. Do you have it in front of you? I'm going to let Jamie talk through the.
Yeah, so there's sort of two mechanisms. There's the deed restriction to sort of protect the property and say it's going to be hospitality and it's going to be commercial for 10 years. And then there's the second option the developer could choose. And one is this phasing. So they could get the building permits for their first residential building. And then they could, the next step then would be they'd come in for their certificate of occupancy. And for certificate of occupancy of that first residential building, they would have had to have pulled a building permit to start building the commercial stuff. And then that would let them do their second residential market rate project. So that's one path, kind of using the sequencing to sort of ensure that the project gets done in a timely manner. The second option was the fee. Kind of we enter a contract with them and they say, we do some fiscal analysis depending on what the project looks like of what a per unit fee would be that would be appropriate. They would agree to pay it after they get occupancy, and the day that the hotel opens, it would go away. So it's kind of two different ways to give the developer a couple options to sort of ensure that the city is protected, the deed restriction, but then there's also this sort of timing motivation as well.
So these options are theirs to choose.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's the deed restriction, and then it's A or B or C.
It's deed restriction and A or B.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the only question I have. Thank you. Yeah.
I just have 3 questions. So in this draft, we've included changing how we're calculating density. And we talk about that we're going to include open spaces that would be dedicated to the city. And I was previously under the impression that there really weren't going to be dedications to the city, that the parkland and the interior streets were all going to remain Malone Guyers. Is that still correct?
That is correct. However, we do want to plan for if any other developer within the site would want to dedicate a park or street space. So that's why that is in there. Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
But nothing's changed in terms of the developer.
Okay. And the other question I have, only because I get asked this so much, as far as the affordable units, they have to build 15% low income and 5% moderate income units. But those units will not be integrated in the market rate housing. The plan is for those units to be provided on a separate site on the mall property.
So for the Merlone Geyer property, that is our understanding of their plan. However, the code is drafted so that they can either be integrated throughout the site or dedicate land for a separate development.
So they can accomplish their affordable goal either way.
Either way, and by state law, you have to have two options for how you can achieve your.
Okay. And my last question is, we're in the process of doing the 41st Avenue study. And I'm making the assumption as part of the 41st Avenue study, there are going to ultimately be impact fees on all of the properties along there to implement items within the 41st Avenue, and they would apply to the mall as well.
That's correct. So when we finish the 41st Avenue corridor study, which also includes Clare Street and Capitola Road, sections of it, we will, following that, start working on a fee analysis and for an impact fee towards those improvements.
Okay, thank you very much.
Vice Mayor? Clarifying, to piggyback on Susan's questions, because I've been thinking about this too. In order to have an impact fee, we have to have a nexus study showing there are impacts from the development on the issue that we're.
That's correct. And it's more than just the development. So they really look at what the overall impact of, for the whole, we're looking at the whole corridor. So it would really be an impact fee that would be charged for beyond the Capitola Mall based on that nexus study and the impact associated with other parcels throughout the city.
We have to have the 41st Ave Clears corridor study done and then identified within our capital improvement program, like a project that needs to be done with the costs associated. And so in the future, when there are developments, we can then have the developers pay into this project that we have in mind.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Vice Mayor, questions? No questions. Okay. I think I would just do a clarifying question along with what Ms. Mussman was asking. So the outdoor spaces that would be created by Merlone Geyer, they're going to maintain them. So if we were thinking about what we were going to have to put money into, Public Works may not necessarily be like at the top of the list unless somebody else comes in and develops something else, is kind of.
That's correct. So
Okay.
with them maintaining not only their parks, but also their streets and sidewalks, that's a cost savings for the city. And
Perfect, thanks. Okay, I will go to public comment. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody wish to do so, come on up. State your name if you'd like it for the record. Hi, welcome.
Hello, how are you this evening? My name is Hector Aspilcueta, and I'm here on behalf of United Local 19. Our union represents workers in the hospitality industry in Santa Cruz. As the city becomes a harder place for workers to live, our union helps workers to stay in our community by ensuring that they earn enough to survive. Our members are excited about a project that can respond to the housing crisis and bring more economic development and tax dollars to Capitola. To ensure that the city maintains the discretion necessary to achieve its goals when the development proposal is submitted, this zoning code amendment should maintain its current permitting oversight for the hotel. The current proposed amendments retain the conditional use permit for residential development, and city staff cited that this will enable the city to ensure a small development project that complies with the objective standards in the CEQA and minimize potential community impacts. Why should these standards not be applied to the hotel development and the zoning update? The developer has not yet submitted a proposal for the hotel, so reducing his permitting requirements without knowledge of what the hotel proposal is will risk streamlining process of careless hospitality development. This is worrisome as hotels potentially bring in low-wage jobs that may worsen the housing crisis, which will be contradictory to the publicized purpose of building more affordable housing. The current zoning amendment proposal should be adjusted so that the hotel use continues to reduce conditional use permits, allowing the city to continue working towards community-oriented development in Capitola. We ask the City Council to hold on passing the current proposal until conversations having had about how this development will be beneficial for the community, including with the hotel's permitting. We are happy to work with the city and the developer before then to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this moment. My name is Marta Hernandez, and I am a member of Unite Here Local 19. I work at Dreaming for several years. I live locally. The cost of living here is very high. As a member of this community, what we need is more affordable housing to working people and good jobs that allows workers to live near the workplace. The city says that this development is about increasing housing, but it seems that it is just trying to make building a hotel easier. Why should it be easier to build a hotel than housing with these new updates? If the hotel provides bad jobs, it will make the housing crisis in this city even worse, as more people will be looking for limited low-income housing. If you are going to allow a hotel, you should be sure it is a responsible development and that it will be not make the housing crisis worse. We have now housing crisis. The last thing Capitola needs is a project that will make the city more unaffordable and unequal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, council members. My name is Dea Kunkun. I'm here on behalf of Unite Here Local 19. We're a union of over 8,500 hospitality workers, and our union, alongside the Santa Cruz Building and Construction Trades Council, sent you a letter last week expressing our concerns. With many of our members living and working here in Santa Clara and Santa Cruz County, ensuring responsible development is important to us. Our members are excited about a project that can respond to the housing crisis and bring more economic development and tax dollars to Capitola. However, we urge the council to hold off on approving the proposed zoning code amendments today, as there are still many conversations to be had regarding how this development would be beneficial to the community and the city. A critical concern that we've come to the council many times to discuss is the fact that the proposed zoning code amendments would make the hotels permitted by right and eliminate the current conditional use permit requirement. This risks the city depriving itself of the tools that are currently in place to ensure responsible hotel development. The current conditional use permit allows City Council to ensure consistency with the general plan and attach conditions of approval to achieve that. It allows community engagement and maintains necessary oversight. And as stated in the municipal code, it makes sure that hotel developments would not be, quote, detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. These existing requirements were set in place to ensure impact-conscious planning and hotel development in Capitola. It's especially important because hotels potentially bring in significant numbers of low-wage jobs to the city and increase the already high demand for affordable housing. I want to reiterate that we recognize that the hotel development is important to the city's budget, and we are aligned with the city's goals of developing a project that is beneficial for the city, the community, and the workers at this project. But the proposal in front of you today includes many incentives for the hotel, such as increasing the height limit, the FAR, and especially with the current discussion on deed restrictions. It is not necessary for the City Council to impose further restrictions on its own power to ensure responsible hotel development. And this would happen by eliminating its conditional use permitting for the hotel. We asked the City Council to amend the current proposal so that the hotel development continues to require conditional use, allowing the city to retain the discretion and consider its impacts on the community and continue working towards community-oriented development in Capitola. Again, we're happy to work with the city and developers to continue this conversation. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Alvarez. I'm a field rep for the NorCal Carpenters Union. I represent members on Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito County. We would like to better understand the developer's level of commitment to supporting the workforce that will build this project. Having a responsible contractor who supports apprenticeship program, provides healthcare, and offers retirement benefits will bring significant advantage to the community and to the local economy. These kind of commitments help ensure quality jobs, workforce development, and long-term economic stability for the region. We look forward to learning more about the developer's approach on these important workforce standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hello, my name is Cheryl, and I wish I had something brilliant to add to this dilemma of all these decisions that you all have to make. And I appreciate that you are attempting to dial it down and get very specific. My concern is I want this to be an asset to the community, not a drain, especially financially. And I haven't totally heard things that satisfy that. Another thing, Capitola's lost population, California's lost population, and now we're building and building, which is a whole issue. I am for building and for especially the affordable aspect, but to overbuild, I do think we need to still pay attention to that, weighing it against the commercial aspect, especially with this project, I think is really critical. And I know you all have been looking at this, so I'm not adding really anything new, unfortunately. And I do have a concern about the zoning, that this parcel is being talked about, but there's other parcels that under the zoning can keep, I don't know for sure, but can keep building with these new zoning laws that are going into effect. So I guess there's 6 parcels and 5 others can at some point come and say, hey, you know, we're going to tear down Ross and we're going to build whatever based on these zoning laws. The other thing is, I appreciate the public outreach that has been discussed, but what happens at the public outreach is we are told over and over again, our hands are tied, that the state. I'm so saddened by the local loss of jurisdiction. We've really lost a powerful, powerful piece. The other thing is the hotel being not the first phase. I remember a council member speaking about the financial piece that a hotel would hold. And consider that in the first phase is the deed restriction instead of second. And again, I don't know what you have to factor into all this, but that's just a thought of mine. And anyway, the other thing is loss of parking seems absolutely ridiculous. So that's just a personal comment. And let's have some creativity in Capitola. I hope the design that they come in with, they're part of our community by helping build this at the mall. So I hope they consider what they are contributing to Capitola. And thank you so much for all that everybody does in all these meetings and listening to people like me. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, comment? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Kevin McGuire. One of the slides that came up talked about PC Tier 2 financial analysts. And at the household size of 1.5, the net new revenue was 1.5 million. Net new expenditures was 1.2. And then below that, they had a household size at 2.1. Net new revenue increased by about 10% from 1.5 to 1.6 million, but new expenditures increased by 40% from 1.2 to 1.71 million as a net impact of negative $40,000. So I think that's really the financial thing that we're worried about. If we get this wrong and we get wrong the needs of police and city services, that's going to be very, very devastating to the city. We just had a major fire, and that took 21 fire resources, 5 different departments. So we can't even handle something as small as a 2-alarm fire here in Capitola without additional resources. So I would definitely consider looking into that. Also, Ultra and Chili's bring in about $800 a square foot in sales, and the rest of the mall, I was told, brings in about $350 a square foot. So it seems like we have really good sales revenue from the mall right now. So to lose 300,000 plus square feet of retail and those jobs to go down to 30 or 40,000 square feet, that doesn't seem to add up. And then the last thing I just really didn't understand, I think we're supposed to have 2 readings, but the recommendation was to waive a further reading. So I'm not sure why we do that and not let the public come and see and hear and have input. So I definitely would think we want some more public connections on that. So, but yeah, just think about the fire, our resources, and the fiscal impact to Capitola 5, 10, 20 years if we can analyze those figures at 1.5, 2.0, 2.1, and really the cost and wages and CalPERS, everything's going up. So if we get that wrong, we're going to be in a big, big deficit. So, and then construction always takes a long time. Right now, with the Stockton Bridge, small thing, but major inconvenience and problems. So what is that going to look like on 41st? Tearing that up to put in big water and sewer, how long is that going to take? So just big impacts that we really kind of need to understand and get our heads around. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Jameis with Marlon Geyer. I wanted to wait just to answer any questions that came up. I obviously gave you guys a lot of information in a couple of letters, so I won't revisit those other than just reiterate a lot of the feedback that we gave you just based on the Kaiser Marston study and our experience developing similar projects. I think we tried to provide some examples from our Mountain View project in San Antonio, including some cross sections showing the clear heights of Pacific Catch and other restaurants. And I just don't want it to be overly expensive and then it becomes a challenge to lease, or it's, the burden is there that we have to navigate around in the future. The comments about, will this be an asset and not a drain? We are fully committed to making this a project that the city is proud of. And there will be outreach that will occur when we're going through our process and submitting any type of an application. We want to involve the community in soliciting that feedback and not just springing it on everyone. So there will be outreach that we will run, and we'll take that feedback and we'll incorporate it. We're just not there yet. And the same goes for, so the comments about, with the Carpenters Union, we'll continue those conversations. The hotel, obviously, removing the CUP, we see that as an ability to incentivize. Adding any type of discretion that could make it more onerous to develop a hotel could work against incentivizing us to do the tier 2 or tier 3 projects. So we want a hotel to happen where that's hopefully that'll bring jobs for the hotel union that they could be happy about. So, and then we're happy with the work that's gone in. Hopefully the feedback that we've provided has been helpful. We want to continue to be a part of the process, and hopefully you can tell by my being here and the letters that we've been engaged, and we want to continue to be part of the process as this moves forward. So thanks. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you for the comments. Anybody else wish to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll take it back to council. We'll start with Ms. Westman. Any comments, deliberation, motion?
So how are we going to do this? I think it might be helpful if we sort of go topic by topic rather than try and cover everything at once. And so
Great.
I'll look to staff for some guidance. It seems like the first thing that we needed to discuss was the tiers. But
Yes, I've put together a chart that we can share
okay,
regarding the tiers.
is that okay if she puts that chart up?
Or do you want to, we can come back to this, but I do,
first, or do we want to talk about something else first?
I'm just looking, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
From the order of the staff report, I think the first thing is the perimeter zone, agreeing with staff recommendation to decrease perimeter zone to 75 feet for tiers 2 and 3, right? You wanted us to make a decision on that, or is that already made?
I thought we decided that last time we were going to go to 75 feet on 40
Tier 2, but not tier 3. I think staff wanted us to make a decision on tier 3, too.
yes, I think, all right.
Sorry, that was just the first item on the staff report. So
Here we go. So I created this afternoon, which is the tiers, and we could go through the different items, like as you were stating, Councilmember Orbach, about the first item being the perimeter zone and 41st Avenue and Capitola Road. Within tier 2 and tier 3, I've left blanks where we don't really have clear direction yet. Our staff recommendation following the last city council meeting was to have 75 feet for 41st Avenue and Capitola Road and 125 along Clare Street. We can utilize this, Mayor, when you feel it's appropriate.
Okay, I think we're feeling like maybe doing a little bit more of a conversation first and then hitting the major topics. That sound right? Do you want to start?
Conversation first. Go ahead.
I definitely do. Is that okay with everybody? Great. So I think it's very, first of all, Katie, thank you to the whole entire staff for all your guys' hard work. To me, it's very important. This is one of the biggest decisions that I think maybe any city council in Capitola might have ever made. And I think it's very important that I would like to just take a second to kind of just take a step back for us all to reflect on where we have come with this whole project and where we are, if you don't mind. So bear with me for a moment and imagine that we go back to the summer of 2019. What we had in front of us was a mall site project built on a partnership between a developer, the city, the community, and was referred to as the Capitola Town Square. The Capitola Town Square concept included an open-air layout with a main thoroughfare, large water feature, outdoor gathering areas, a new movie theater, improved bicycle and pedestrian paths. 800 units of residential units, roughly 335 square feet of commercial space, including retail, restaurants, entertainment. Building heights were set at 50 feet. And an economic impact study was suggesting that this project would bring in between $850 to $1.2 million of annual revenue, and those were in 2019 numbers. On top of that proposed project, the Sears building was highly looked at that time for a TJ Maxx Home Goods or a Petco, which have brought in additional revenue at the same time. This project did not display a do not in my backyard approach, as some want to attach to Capitola many of times. It was a collaboration of parties working together as a community to meet our collective interests and the financial needs of the city at the same time. And now we wake up from the dream, and about 325 Fridays later, and we have this mall development idea in front of us this evening. It looks quite different. Building heights are now proposed at 85 feet. We should note that the city has moved from 50 to 60 to 70, and now are being asked to be at 85 feet in some areas, and as an effort to help bring development forward. A request from the developer for the project to not have or included dedicated bike safety lanes in potentially the most highly impacted neighborhood in our community. It's also projected to have only approximately 35,000 square feet of retail being proposed, which is an estimated 35 to 40% will simply be a relocation of existing tenants, effectively removing what once was envisioned as a countywide retail destination center. At the same time, I just read an article from the Wall Street Journal this weekend stating that the Gen Z is now being referred to as mall rats again, and they're seeing the mall experience one more new way of shopping. We are seeing this reflected in development just 25 miles away at Santana Row, Valley Fair, Sunnyvale Town Center, and the former Valco and Cupertino centers. The proposal of approximately 1,100 new apartments and units. As the state mandates us to focus on affordable housing, only 266 low-income units will be out of this, and 90 moderate incomes will be deemed affordable. While this is, while the rest of the will be at market rate. I don't hear very many people advocating for market rate housing. What I hear constantly is that housing is too expensive, and I'm not convinced that a build more to lower the prices or a supply and demand analogy is the best plan of action for our community. Another piece of the data that doesn't often reflect when discussing the need for housing is that as of yesterday, right now there's 630 housing units available in Santa Cruz that are not currently even filled. The rate of housing absorption on some projects estimated at about 20 units a month. Development already in progress in Santa Cruz has right now 1,648 units, and that doesn't include the estimated 1,100 units that we're looking at. As a reminder, as we are being told and trying to develop housing within our local neighborhoods, the live and work environment, often referring to as a 15-minute city concept. Yet, the mall project that will probably see a reduction of more of 200 plus jobs from the mall site due to the loss of retail. There is little to no focus on the missing middle, which includes teachers, classified school staff, first responders, food and hospitality workers, or even our own city staff members. On a positive side, one element that could help the project would be make it financially beneficial to the city is the inclusion of a 121-room hotel and conference center that is being proposed within a tiered development. We hope this will not detract from the hotel and the community, nor will the state alter the TOT tax distribution formula, which could have severe project budget issues in the future. We also need to acknowledge that the city continues to work in good faith and make concessions without a clear project vision from the developer. While we are being told the developer will not spend any money until these concessions are granted, this makes this process extremely difficult. Let's be honest, the developer has pushed the state mandate to the fullest extent, yet without presenting a single conceptual drawing to the community or the city. Unlike what was done with the previous project in the 2019 team, that project was ultimately canceled by the developer. So the elephant in the room is this question. Are they simply going through this process in order to just sell the project to another developer? I hope not. As council members, our backs against the wall due to state mandates and regulations. I support the need for housing. I've stated many times, housing has separated my family. 3 of my oldest daughters had to move out of the area for housing. We must be completely transparent about what's happening. Capitola is already more densely populated than San Diego, San Jose, Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, and Carmel by the Sea. And the state-assigned housing numbers that were assigned to Capitola are outrageous. This is not a YIMBY, and this is not a NIMBY issue. This is 100% a SIMBY problem. Yes, SIMBY, Sacramento in my backyard. It's now time for Marlon Geyer, our committed partner, to take a feedback that they have heard tonight, return with a project that not only meets their needs, but truly reflects the needs of our community and neighbors in the county. At the same time, it's our responsibility as council members to ensure whatever ultimately builds does not place Capitola in fiscal distress. We owe it to our residents and local businesses and to the future of the community. I appreciate my fellow council members' time for allowing me an opportunity to share my thoughts this evening, and I'm open to the deliberation. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Westman.
I'd like to make a comment for kind of backing up what Mr. Jensen said. I appreciate his comments. And in listening to the public today talking, I'd like to ask the staff what would happen if we pumped the brakes and slowed it down a little bit? What would we lose? Huge concerns over the bike lanes and the churros. If we give that away in that area, we'll never get it back. Bike lanes are extremely important. And then the cost for the drain on public safety is a huge concern. So now we can talk about the tiers. Put that out.
Because I think we do have some things to talk about, because we haven't talked about bike lanes yet, so we don't know that bike lanes are going to go away. So I think it would be good for us to get started and sort of figure out where we are. So if you wouldn't mind putting the chart up once again about the tiers, I think the easiest way is to go through that and sort of discuss the areas where we might need to come to an agreement on. I'll be honest, I even put my glasses on and it's really hard for me to see that chart and read it. So
I actually printed this out if you would.
Oh, great. Thank
you. So we can start with the first item that needs decision. Council direction is the perimeter zone on 41st Ave. Last council meeting, Councilmember Westman, you'd proposed going to 75 on 41st Ave and Capitola Road and keeping it at 125 on Claire's. Merlongaya Partners requested 75 feet. Has requested 75 feet.
all the way around.
I don't believe so. It looks to me like Merlongaya Partners is still at 125 on Claire's.
Right. I thought we had reached agreement with them that they were, you can't hear me? I thought we had reached agreement that we were going to do 75 feet on Capitola Road and 41st Avenue. We were going to keep the 125 feet on Clare Street because basically in that area, there's really not going to be any major construction going on, and that's the area that's closest to housing adjacent to the mall.
That's right, I recall.
Were we in agreement?
Yes.
I think so.
I remember that.
I agree.
Okay. And for clarity, that's tier
Tier 2.
Tier
2. I think, and I thought that was going to apply to tier 3 as well, which is the 200,000 square foot commercial tier.
Okay.
There's just so many tiers right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next item is the perimeter height. So this is within the 75-foot setback from 41st Avenue and the 75-foot setback
So
Capitola Road.
I have a question about that, just to clarify. So it's my understanding that in the perimeter setback, the one structure that in tier 2 and tier 3 that could go up to 85 feet in that setback is a hotel.
That's correct.
We have an exception for the hotel itself.
Right.
So for me, I think I would want to stick with the 55, was it 55 feet that we had before?
I think it's 65 feet for a zone.
2 and 3,
yeah.
55
2
for
and
1 and 65 for
2 and 3. Yeah.
I agree.
So do we want to sort of go down the line and see if we're in agreement with that for the height for the perimeter zone except for the hotel?
Yes. Okay.
So it's tier 1, 55, 2, and 3, 65. All right, and the next one?
The core height, so this is the area inside the block, not in the perimeter zone. And staff has been suggesting 75 feet, or Planning Commission, I should say, suggested 75 feet for the core in tier 2, and Merlongaya is asking for 85 feet. And in tier, sorry, Jamie, I can't see that top. In tier, that's the only one that we're asking for direction on. For tiers 3A and 3B, 85 feet height limit was, it seemed like the Planning Commission was in alignment with Merlongaya and Councilmember Westman's recommendation. So I put it in at 85, but we can change that if the city council would like it.
Is this for the hotel?
This is 85 feet for the core in the center where they can go up to 85 feet. So let's discuss tier 2 first. Planning Commission recommended 75 feet in the core, but you could go up to 85 feet with a hotel. And Malone Geyer Partners is asking for 85 feet in the core.
So one point of clarification. In this table, at the last meeting, Councilmember Westman, you put forward a proposal and said, let's get rid of tier 2, let's get rid of 3A, let's just have this, and then the big commercial option.
Right.
To try, because your new tier 2 lined up pretty well with 3A, the way it's presented here is if you can see sort of all the light blue in the middle, those are all sort of the 3A proposals, and then it includes yours. So the tier 2 proposal, you could do away with it entirely if we only want to have one option like we were talking about before, and then an added option with a whole bunch of commercial.
Yeah, I thought we had sort of agreed we were going to go down and we were going to have 3 tiers. Tier 1 was going to be the residential only option. Tier 2, we were going to change tier 2, so we had the hotel option in there, and I had actually asked for 120 rooms and 4,000 square feet of sort of conference space with that. And we had talked about 35,000 square feet of commercial. And then when we went to tier 3, we were talking about having, I'm doing this all by memory, 200,000 square feet of commercial space. And he's got it for me. Thank you.
From the mayor.
Thank you. We talked about 200,000 square feet of commercial space. We actually went down to 55 feet in the perimeter for the tier 3 that I had proposed. But I assume that still left an exception in there for a hotel to be 85 feet. And the core was at 85 feet. So for me, for the 3 tiers that I think we should ultimately end up with, I'm fine with the core being 75 feet in the housing only, all housing option. And then I think it should be 85 feet for the core in both my tier 2 and tier 3. That makes sense?
Can I
Sure.
just maybe counter that? I see why you've laid it out the way you did, because we're really exploring all of the options that have been on the table. And it's true, at this point, we don't know if it's Merlin Geyer who's going to develop it or another developer. And I just want to make sure we're also setting reasonable standards that are supported by the Kaiser Marston study. I do worry about whether we are setting the minimal hotel room requirements too high, and whether we should add back, consider this 2, right? But changing that to 75 feet for the perimeter zone, I would like, having that 85 room hotel, that meeting space of 3,000, and having a retail commercial space of 35,000.
Yeah, for me, I would probably, and we'll hear what everyone else has to say, I would probably stick with 120 rooms. I do think the meeting space ought to be reduced to 3,600, because that was what was in the Kaiser Marston study for a 120 room hotel. And I think we want to try and base as many of our decisions on facts and things that have been analyzed. And I recognize that both of those are on the high end, as is, the 35,000 square feet of commercial space. But for me, it's important that, as we've heard from the public, and I think we've all talked about, this is going to be a pretty major hit to the revenue that comes into the city, even with a 120 room hotel and 3,800 square feet of meeting space and 35,000 square feet of commercial. So right now, those are the numbers I would sort of stick with to help out the city financially. So we can talk about it and discuss it.
No, I know. you know, given that Merlin Geyer has agreed to, you know, this 3A of 4,000 square foot meeting space, that he's not pushing back, that it's too much, I would prefer to keep it at 4,000 square foot. I know you said you'd want to go down to 3,600.
So I guess
Where
we're
is that
getting
on this?
confused because are we
3As.
going to have, I think we
City
need to,
council column.
I know, but there's no line for the.
It is at the very bottom on the screen.
Oh,
right there.
4K. Okay.
So I think actually, I think one of you was just about to say what I was about to say, which is I think maybe the first question to resolve is how many tiers are we going to have? You know, are we going to have, we're going to have tier one. We know that. It sounds like there's agreement around having an incentivized option. And the question is, do we have sort of two flavors of incentivized options or do we have three? And previously we had three, which was, the planning commission came up with this idea of sort of the lower hotel room number, kind of more attainable, but they didn't get as many incentives, so they got less density. And then a tier three, which was more hotel rooms, more density, more height. And so I think that's the fundamental question is we have tier one is a given. Right now we have tier two, which last time the council was talking about potentially disposing of and just going with 3A and 3B. And I think that's kind of a first question to kind of work through. And then I think we can maybe make this a little bit easier.
If I a question on the original tier two, the financial analysis that was done, it was down at 270 range. Was that correct?
I believe so.
So I think that's where our concerns came from. The last thing was that was, I mean, you're talking that's a police officer and a part-time employee. I mean, that's how tight that revenue stream on our projection was. And so I think that's where I left at the last meeting thinking that we were going to build from the three tiers that Councilmember Westman had, which I was in support of. And then I just need a point of clarification. When we talk about like Marlon Geyer agreeing, I mean, there's no agreement. I mean, right, we don't have a plan. We don't have drawings. We don't have any idea. We're just talking about some response letters that we get back a day or two before a meeting and that you're trying to respond to. Like, there hasn't been any agreements. Is that correct? It's just feedback back and forth.
This would just be options for them to utilize in the future. No
Right, perfect.
agreement.
Thank you so much.
So going back to option two, I know we talked about eliminating that outright last time, but given this most recent letter from Merlin Geyer and the considerations of the Kaiser Marston study, again, I just worry that we're not setting the minimum enough to have a project. So I hear your point about it fiscally not being the ideal project, right? Of course, I would want the 3A project with 120 rooms and the larger event space. That is, of course, my number one option. But should we also have another option for a smaller hotel? In this option, instead of that 25,000 minimum square foot of commercial, I would kick it up to 35 square foot. If they want to build a smaller hotel, because that's what's feasible, and have a smaller event space, but giving them that option too, to build a smaller hotel and have 35 square foot event commercial. What do you guys think about that?
why don't we hear from Mr. Clark down there?
I would like to get rid of tier number two and then just continue to work on 1, 3A, and 3B.
Really don't like this. I don't like looking at it. Okay, I think can we just start fresh with a fresh
We can.
part?
Yeah, give me a
I really wish we had what Ms. Westman had brought to the table.
Yeah. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll try to give you guys something that we can
So is there
work from.
to have Councilmember Westman's chart put up so as a starting point and then go?
I think since that's kind of where we all left off, maybe that's a good jumping point for right now. Just to sort of simplify it, this is
I agree to that.
not
Yeah,
easy to
I
read.
agree. Well, yes, let me try to
Okay.
simplify.
Let's
Just give
take
us
a
5 minutes and
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll resume in about 5 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, so I think
Susan's, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I found this chart confusing for me. I couldn't.
Okay, welcome back. No, we're not looking for picture perfect. I think my form of clarity is I want to kind of start where the council wants to start, and then we can look back at these other points to see what's matching and what's not, and then move forward there, because I think more importantly, it's what we think would be best for the city is what we need to put forward. So there's still 4 groups.
There's still 4 groups. Let me try to explain what's here, and we'll see if it works. So you have the different tiers. You have tier 1. I've narrowed it down to sort of the topics which seem to be the most relevant. They were the ones that Councilmember Westman included in her proposal. And so this is the PC's recommendation. And then this is sort of what your council direction would be. This is the tier 2, which we were last talking about whether or not we were going to continue to include it. This is tier 3A with Councilmember Westman's proposal, and then basically a blank here. The CC is intended to be what your direction is tonight. And so this is Susan Westman's proposal. This is the Planning Commission's recommendation, and then this was for 3B, Susan Westman's proposal and the Planning Commission's recommendation. And so the goal would be to fill in each one of these CC columns. So the perimeter height, the core height, commercial square footage, hotel rooms, and then meeting space for each one of the tiers. So I've heard a couple ideas. Councilmember Westman suggested going to 3,600, I think, 34.
Yes, that's correct.
Just a point, I'm sorry. How do we get to 4? Sorry, I have to go back for that.
The 4
tiers.
4, we have 4 columns now.
Oh.
And when we left last meeting, we were at 3. I was just wondering how we got to 4.
So this is, staff hasn't deleted the old tier 2 yet. If council hasn't taken action, so if you would like to, you could say, let's not have a tier 2 at all. The direction you were going was getting rid of it last meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Appreciate it.
Okay, so let's focus on 3A. So the perimeter height, I believe we had an asterisk as well, because is that, so we're at 65.
With the exception for the hotel.
So I think that also needs to be somewhere on here, just so that's clear. Or, yeah, or do that.
Exception for the hotel.
That's fine.
Very
Yeah.
clear in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. And then core height, 85. Okay. And then commercial square footage. I guess we were looking at 35. I'm curious if we can be more in alignment with the Planning Commission with 40, or we want to stick.
I would like to see it with more in line with the Planning Commission.
I'd like to see it more in line with the Kaiser Marston study, which is 35.
I'd stick with the 35.
Okay.
I'm fine with the 35, as long as we're with the hotel at 120 room.
Okay. Okay. Then that's fine with me as well. Are you okay with keeping it at 4,000, not bringing it back down?
You know, again, I think we want to stick with what the Kaiser Marston report came up with. So I think in being consistent, we ought to go with the 3,600 because, and Malonga are certainly free to build 4,000 if they feel that that would work, but based
Well, then I think it should say 4,000 so that allotment is there. But if they bring a project to us that is 36 or 38, then we're
not in conformance with our new zoning regulations. So, yeah, I would go with 36, and if they bring us 4,000, we'll say, yes, thank you.
I can agree with that.
That's fine with me.
okay. And then hotel rooms, we want to stick with 120 120.
I'm sorry?
120 on the hotel room.
Yes.
Okay. 3A.
So are we going, so are we going to eliminate 2?
Well, that's the
Yes.
question I'm posing.
That's-
I know
I think safely
I know I was a proponent of eliminating this option because why not just have what we want as the option? But I'm kind of going back and forth, right? I worry that we won't get a project if we make it so difficult. So do we have an option for a smaller hotel, smaller event space, and ask for the 35,000 commercial, which was not there? I don't know. That's a conversation I think we should explore.
So one thought, when you look at these numbers that are up here, these are the numbers that they're kind of the core. They're in the housing element. So one option would be is if you slightly dialed up the incentives for a tier 2. I recognize the fact that, as Councilmember Jensen said, the numbers for tier 2, it was pretty close to break even. But breaking even is better than a tier 1 project. And so, you could consider looking at some of the incentives. The incentives that we adjusted previously have been the density with the 5 units per acre bump up, the perimeter height, the core height. But you could consider only bumping one of those, for example, in a lower tier 2, understanding it's not as desirable for us, but trying not to incentivize Merlonghire to take that path.
Well, 3A doesn't look all that wildly different from 2. So those are our concessions, correct? Right. Those are our incentives, are being slotted in 3A.
As Councilmember Jensen said earlier, one of the things that makes this so difficult is that we don't have a project and we don't know who's going to build it. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's important that we look at making certain that, we protect the city, financially. And I'm trying to come up, certainly, I think on a tier 2 project, the core height has to be the same 85 feet, because that's just what we've sort of agreed to. We're going to have this perimeter around it, so we're going to have a core in there that's going to be taller. But for most people, looking at those buildings in the middle won't have quite the impact that they have in the perimeter area. And then, if we go to, 35,000 square feet of commercial there we're, certainly raising that number. And, for the hotel rooms, 85 just seems pretty low to me. Maybe there is some place in between, 120, but I'm really worried about that.
Where I am looking at that from another option is say, again, like I said earlier, we don't even have a project. So to say what we need, have a zoning code amendments, and let's see a project that comes forward. What if that project comes forward and it's absolutely dynamic, and maybe they say, we've done a study and trends have changed in the last 2 years, and we are going to put in some more retail space because there's a trend for that, which can help offset, and we're seeing lower demand for a hotel. But let's lay out what's best for the city, what the needs are, and build off of that. And I think that's a really important message for us to say today with not anything in front of us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's frustrating not having something tangible. However, we're starting from that grain of sand at this point, and that's what we're like getting so nitty gritty about, so that what we put forth is what our wishes and expectations are, and hopefully what would that we could mostly agree upon.
I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry, but I agree with Councilmember Jensen. I think if they come in with a plan, this council and the city has clearly indicated that we're willing to work with them and come up with something that's going to be feasible. It's just we're in this predicament right now, so we need something that we know is going to work for us. And if you can come and show us something else, then we're here to talk.
Yeah, and to add to that is the state has really screwed us as the locals on what we can say. But here we do have some say. So this is why we need to put down what we want and hope for the best.
Is this a consensus around pulling tier 2?
I think so.
Delete the call.
Delete.
Not coming back.
Nope. Delete. There's 3 tiers. Oh, okay.
Okay, does anyone want to talk further? This would be the council's 3A, which is the minimum density is 20, the maximum density is 53, so it's a 5-unit density incentive. The perimeter height is 65, so it's a 10-foot perimeter height increase, and then 85 in the core, 35,000 square feet of commercial, 120 hotel rooms, 3,600 square feet of meeting room space.
I'm happy.
I have been talking to staff, and I was wondering if our director would pull up I'm concerned about the retail commercial space that we've been working on. And I was wondering, Katie, if you're able to pull up the language that we were working from.
So in the slide deck, 2 slides after the recommendation is a condition or a new requirement that we had drafted following our discussion. So
Well, my concern is about the use of what the retail space can be used for, and to make sure that we're not positioning the city in a place that it might not be able to generate revenue. And so that's what I've been working with. And I just wonder if we could just review that and have some comments around that. So with any motion that would be made, I would like to have this as a condition to that, or added to it, or part of the motion.
The intent behind this was to ensure that to the extent feasible, the uses were going to be open to the public and we're going to be contributing to a public sense of space, contributing sales tax. And so it's really calling out those uses and then pointing out that membership-based personal service uses such as gyms, fitness centers, yoga studios don't count towards the minimum. And then providing a mechanism, because obviously things change over time, that the planning commission could permit underlying uses allowed in the zoning code through the issuance of a CUP.
I would be happy with that if we also, I don't think this is an appropriate place for medical uses. And, I don't know if the first paragraph completely eliminates that, but, that's it's one of the things we've talked about on 41st Avenue before is not having, the commercial areas taken over by medical uses.
we do have ground floor office conditions within the regional commercial zone. And we're going to pull those up, but they're pretty restrictive in terms of where you can have, or where you, like not allowing office space on ground floor commercials except under certain circumstances. So Ben is pulling up the commercial zone right now. My computer's tied to the Zoom, so.
Well, is it consensus that we're on board with these types of conditions?
I think you could, I think adding medical
Yeah,
here.
just add medical in there.
That's
It's fine with me. I think it makes
Fine with
sense. We do want it to be a vibrant sort of, retail area that's open to the public, that creates a dynamics area in there that people will want to be at.
Great, I agree.
I have 3 others, but I'll wait and see if as we go through the other options and other things that were laid out regarding bikes and stuff like that we could comment on.
Okay, so you want to circle back to the topics? You had the slide that depicted which topics still needed input.
Sure. Retail height, if we could pull up the slides. I don't have. There's one of the remaining items. Yes. So perimeter zone we've discussed, the tiers we've discussed, ground floor commercial, bike lanes, and parking. So I want to start with ground floor commercial. We're suggesting that ground floor commercial be measured from the floor to the bottom of the structural above and at 16 feet. Originally, we had said 18 floor to floor.
I agree that I think that still allows for some creativity of the space.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree too.
Great. And then bike lanes, there was a request for sharrows throughout, and we're allowing sharrows in front of commercial, but suggesting that bike lanes be required. That follows the planning commission recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. We should be proactive about planning the future use for that space.
And one of the points I want to stress, and over the course of the conversations about this, it's entirely possible that some of the internal streets could potentially, frankly, in an ideal world, be detailed out and designed as essentially pedestrian-oriented streets that are really not intended. Maybe they're for fire access primarily and mostly like a little shopping district area. And in that case, I think, it would make a lot of sense to talk about, probably don't need a bike lane in that sort of scenario. And so we have a process by which we could create that waiver. I think that really helped me sort of think about sort of this is the baseline, this should be our standard, but there are examples of situations where it may not be.
Perfect. And then bike parking.
So it's my understanding that we haven't really had time to analyze the bike parking. So your suggestion is that we not include bike parking at this time, but go ahead and go forward and come back and look at bike parking separately?
So my suggestion would be that the city council recommend that the planning commission take a look at bicycle parking within the parking chapter, not just specific to the mall site.
Okay.
And separating it completely from our updates.
I agree with not deleting this adoption and having staff analyze other bike parking ordinances around the region.
And so to be clear, what that means is that our bike parking rules, current rules, which is what we were planning on relying on, would remain in effect, and we would give us the opportunity. The city of Santa Cruz has very similar bike parking requirements, so I think we could do some research looking at some of the projects that have been completed there, utilization rates, also thinking ahead. These buildings are going to be here for 10, 20, 30, 50 years and trying to plan for the future. So doing that as an independent process, because it would affect, I think, our bike parking regulations citywide.
Right, and again, if they submitted a plan to us, then we could work with Malone Geyer on how to facilitate that and make certain it was, working for the development, because it seems like bike parking needs to be all over the site, not just in one or two places.
Are those all the items?
Yes, they are.
With that said, I would like to move the recommended action. Do I have to read the whole thing?
And you want to include the planning commission reviewing?
Yes, for the staff analysis of the bike parking ordinance and having our planning commissioners look at our citywide.
And vice mayor's added land use requirement and the tiers as outlined during the meeting.
Yes.
I do have two follow-up questions to that before we take it any further. Would be, how do we ensure some of the things that you lined out, talked about the financial security of the city and potential impact fees that might have to be, how does that work into, or is that completely, how do we ensure that those two are tied back to this? And my other thing is, the deed restriction that we're talking about, I don't see those being part of that action. So on what we're voting for, how are we going to connect those or highlight those?
So the deed restriction will happen at the time of review and entitlement. So following the entitlement, so the Planning Commission would take action and approve a project, and following that, we would move into mapping a subdivision application and placing a deed restriction on those lots.
And
then in terms of, does that answer that question?
yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm quite sure that I saw they're in court, recorded in the staff report recommendation, but I'm just saying, is there any way that, do we need to highlight those anymore, or those you feel that we've clearly defined and those are taken care of?
I think they're taken care of. They're in the draft ordinance. So.
Perfect. And also about any potential impact fees.
So that is not in the draft ordinance, so that will take place at a later date after we finish the 41st Avenue corridor study. We would then need to move into doing the analysis for an impact fee.
So is there a way that we can connect some language to this that reflect that? I mean, so there's a direct correlation between the two?
That will take place at the adoption of the impact fees. So the adoption of the impact fees will also update the code and specify where the impact fee is applicable.
I look to you for guidance. Thank you.
Okay, and if we second it, just so, because we got asked that question, it will come back for a second reading. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I'll second Councilmember Orbach's motion.
Okay, we have a second and a motion. Or the other way around, a motion and a second. May we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Clark,
Aye.
Councilmember Orbach, Councilmember Westman,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jensen,
Aye.
and Mayor Morgan.
Aye, passes unanimously. Great job, everybody. I really want to thank everybody's participation, staff, external folks. It's taken all of us to do this. So that being said, item 6 this evening, adjournment. Take care of yourself and everybody else.